Oedipus, the man who could not escape himself. There is a moment, not dramatic, not cinematic, where a man realizes that the enemy he has been fighting all his life is not outside of him. It is not the world, it is not fate, it is not even the gods. It is himself, and not just himself, but the shadow of who he was before he could choose, before he could understand, before he could even speak. There is a war every man must wage, not against time, nor against society, nor even against death, but against the invisible hand that shaped him before he knew he was being shaped. And that hand is not always cruel. It is often loving. It is often the hand of the mother. It is often the hand of the father. It is often the hand of tradition. It is often the hand of culture. And sometimes it is the hand of prophecy, a prophecy not written in stone, but written in the bones of his own being. And so he walks through life, unaware that he is already walking in circles, that he is already fulfilling a destiny he never chose, that he is already becoming the thing he most fears. And that is the tragedy of Oedipus. Not that he killed his father, not that he married his mother, but that he believed he was escaping fate, when all along he was walking straight into it. Because fate does not always wear a mask. Sometimes it wears the face of love. Sometimes it wears the face of fear. Sometimes it wears the face of truth, and the man who seeks it most is the one who cannot bear to see it. Oedipus ran. He ran from Corinth. He ran from Polybus and Merope, the king and queen who raised him, not as a prince, but as a son. He ran because he heard a whisper in the dark, a whisper that said, "You will kill your father, you will marry your mother." He did not believe they were his real parents. He did not want to believe it, and so he fled. He thought he was escaping fate, but what he was really running from was the question of who he was. Because if you do not know who you are, then you cannot know what you are capable of. And if you cannot know what you are capable of, then you cannot stop yourself from becoming it. Oedipus believed he was free. He believed he was choosing. He believed he was the master of his own destiny. But freedom is not the absence of chains. It is the presence of awareness. And Oedipus had none. He was a man who fled from prophecy, not because he feared it, but because he feared what it revealed about him. That he was not the man he thought he was. That he was not the son he believed himself to be. That he was not the savior he wished to be. And so he ran. And in running, he fulfilled the very prophecy he sought to escape. Because the prophecy was never about the future, it was about the self. And the self, once denied, becomes a curse. Because the self, once denied, becomes fate. There is a moment in every man's life, whether he knows it or not, when he sees himself in the eyes of a woman. Not just a woman, but the first woman, the mother. She is the first mirror, the first reflection, the first image of love, of safety, of belonging. And she is also the first wound. Because no matter how much she gives, she cannot give what she does not have. And no matter how much she loves, she cannot love in a way that fully completes him. Because a mother is not meant to complete a man, she is meant to shape him, and then to let him go. But what happens when she cannot? What happens when her love becomes the prison instead of the cradle? What happens when her gaze becomes the weight instead of the warmth? What happens when the mirror does not let you leave? That is the tragedy of Oedipus. Not that he married his mother, but that he never escaped her. Even when he thought he had. Even when he thought he had found a new life. Even when he thought he had built a kingdom. Even when he thought he had become a king. He was still trapped in the gaze of the woman who first held him. Because the mother is not just a person. She is a symbol. She is the beginning. She is the origin. She is the foundation. And if a man does not learn to leave her, not physically, but spiritually, then he will spend his life trying to return. Even if he does not know he is doing it. Even if he believes he is moving forward. Even if he thinks he is free. He is not. Because the mother is the first voice. And if you do not learn to speak in your own voice, then you will spend your life echoing hers. And that is the curse of the unresolved son. He believes he is searching for love, but he is really searching for home. He believes he is building a future, but he is really trying to rewrite the past. He believes he is choosing his path, but he is really walking in circles, because the past is not behind him, it is inside him. And until he faces it, until he sees it, until he names it, he will never be free. Because freedom is not the absence of history, it is the mastery of it. There is a moment in every man's life when he must choose, not between two women, not between two lovers, but between two visions of himself. One is the woman who offers comfort, the one who sees him as he is, the one who holds him, the one who tells him he is enough. And the other is the woman who sees what he could be, the one who challenges him, the one who demands more, the one who refuses to let him settle. And in that choice, in that confrontation, a man is forged. Because women are not obstacles, they are mirrors. They are not temptations, they are revelations. They are not distractions, they are reflections. And depending on what a man sees in them, he either becomes who he is meant to be, or he becomes what he fears. Oedipus saw in Jocasta not just a woman, he saw a throne, he saw a kingdom, he saw a life, he saw a future, he saw love. But he did not see himself, because if he had, he would have known. He would have known that she was not just a queen, she was his mother, and that is the truth that undid him. Because the woman who loves you can also be the woman who destroys you, not because she wants to, but because she is the mirror. And if you are not ready to see yourself, then the mirror will shatter, and with it, your illusion of who you are. Because the woman is not the problem, the woman is not the curse, the woman is not the temptation, the woman is the test. And if you fail it, you do not lose her, you lose yourself. Because the woman who loves you is not meant to complete you, she is meant to reveal you. And if you are not ready to see what she reveals, then you will destroy her, or worse, you will destroy yourself. Because the woman is not the enemy, the woman is the mirror, and the mirror does not lie. It only shows you what you are afraid to see. Here is the curse of the unresolved man. Oedipus thought he was cursed by the gods. He thought he was doomed by prophecy. He thought he was a victim of fate. But he was not. He was cursed by himself, by his refusal to see, by his refusal to know, by his refusal to face the truth, because the truth was too painful, because the truth was too intimate, because the truth was too close, because the truth was in his own blood. And that is the curse of the unresolved son. He believes the curse is outside him. He believes it is in the stars. He believes it is in the past. He believes it is in the hands of others. But the curse is in him. It is in the way he runs from himself. It is in the way he avoids the mirror. It is in the way he clings to comfort. It is in the way he refuses to see. Because every man who has not faced the mother has not faced himself. Because every man who has not named his fear is still being shaped by it. Because every man who has not confronted his past is still living in it. And that is the real tragedy of Oedipus. Not that he became the thing he feared, but that he never saw it coming, because he was too afraid to look, because he was too afraid to know, because he was too afraid to see, and so he walked into his fate, blind, not with his eyes, but with his soul. And that is the curse of the modern man. Not that he is doomed, not that he is cursed, but that he is blind. Blind to the past, blind to the mirror, blind to the mother, blind to himself. And until he sees, until he knows, until he names it, he will keep walking in circles, believing he is free, believing he is choosing, believing he is moving forward, when all the while he is only running, and the only way out is through the fear, through the shame, through the denial, through the pain. Because only when a man stops running from himself does he begin to walk toward who he is meant to be. Because only when he stops fearing the mirror does he begin to see. Because only when he stops fleeing the mother does he begin to leave. Because only when he stops denying the truth does he begin to be free. Because freedom is not the absence of fate. Freedom is the mastery of it. Because fate is not a prison. Fate is a mirror. And the man who dares to look sees not just his curse. He sees his power. He sees his truth. He sees his becoming. And that is the final revelation, that the curse was never outside him. It was always inside. And once he sees it, he can break it. Because the only thing more powerful than fate is the man who dares to name it. A man who has not seen himself cannot see the world. He walks through life like a shadow of his own potential. He speaks without conviction. He acts without clarity. He loves without depth. He builds without foundation. Because he does not know who he is. And if a man does not know who he is, then he will spend his life trying to prove it to others, trying to prove it to women, trying to prove it to the world, but never to himself. That is the wound of the unresolved man, not that he is broken, but that he is blind. And blindness is not always in the eyes. Sometimes it is in the soul, and the only way to see is to be burned, to be stripped bare, to be forced to look at the thing he has spent his life avoiding, himself. Now see the fire that reveals. Oedipus was not blinded by the gods. He was blinded by the truth. He did not lose his sight in battle. He lost it in revelation, because the truth is a fire, and fire does not ask permission. It burns, it destroys, it consumes, and in its destruction, it reveals. Because before fire, we hide, we wear masks, we build illusions, we tell ourselves stories. We say, I am not that man, I am not like my father, I am not trapped by my past, I am not repeating the sins of those who came before me. But fire does not care what we say. Fire only cares what is real, and when it touches us, it burns away the mask, it burns away the illusion, it burns away the story, and what is left is the truth, the raw, unfiltered, unbearable truth. And that is what happened to Oedipus. He was not punished, he was revealed, he was not cursed, he was seen, and once he saw himself, he could no longer bear to look, so he blinded himself, not out of guilt, not out of shame, but out of necessity. Because once you see the truth, you can never go back. Once you see yourself, you can never pretend again. Once you see your reflection, you can never unsee it. And that is the fire every man must walk through, not because he wants to, but because he must. Because until he does, he is not a man. He is only a boy wearing the clothes of one. Here is the mirror that must be shattered. There is a moment in every man's life when the mirror must be broken, not because it is false, not because it lies, but because it holds him, because it defines him, because it tells him who he is, and he believes it. And sometimes the mirror is a woman, sometimes it is his mother, sometimes it is his lover, sometimes it is the world. But the mirror is not the enemy, the mirror is the truth, and the truth is not always kind, it is not always comforting, it is not always what you want to hear, it is only what is. And if a man does not learn to break the mirror, then he will spend his life living inside it. And that is the prison of the modern man. He does not break the mirror, he clings to it. He builds his identity around it. He lets it define him, he lets it shape him, he lets it tell him who he is. And when the mirror cracks, he panics, because he no longer knows who he is, because he has never lived outside of it. That is the tragedy of Oedipus. He did not break the mirror, he believed it. He believed that Jocasta was his queen. He believed that he was free. He believed that he had escaped his fate. And when the mirror shattered, he could not bear it, because he had no self outside of it. He had no identity beyond it. He had no truth beyond what it showed him. And so he blinded himself, because once the mirror is gone, the only thing left is the self. And if you do not know who you are, then the self is a curse. But if you do, if you have built your identity not on the reflection of others, if you have forged your truth not in the gaze of women, if you have walked your path not in the shadow of your mother, then the shattered mirror is not a loss, it is a liberation. Because once the mirror is gone, you are free. Free from the need to be seen, free from the need to be known, free from the need to be loved in a way that binds you. Because once the mirror is gone, you are no longer a reflection. You are the fire. A man must die before he can become, not physically, but spiritually. He must kill the version of himself that was shaped by others. He must bury the version of himself that was built on illusion. He must burn the version of himself that was created to please. Because the self that is not chosen is not real. It is only a mask. And masks do not last. They crack, they fade, they fall away. And when they do, what is left is either truth or nothing. Oedipus did not choose to die, but he was forced to confront the man he had become, forced to face the truth of his origins, forced to see that he was not who he thought he was. And in that death, something new was born. Not joy, not peace, not even clarity, but conviction. Because once you have died to the false self, you can never go back. You can never pretend again. You can never live in illusion. You can never believe the mask, because you have seen the truth. And once you have seen it, you can never unsee it. That is the price of self-knowledge. It is not easy. It is not comforting. It is not safe. It is not popular. It is not what the world wants from you. but it is the only thing that will ever set you free. Because freedom is not the absence of rules. Freedom is the presence of truth, and truth is fire, and fire burns, and burning is painful, but it is only through fire that a man is forged, only through fire that he is revealed, only through fire that he becomes, because the man who does not burn does not become. He only fades, he only drifts, he only follows, he only pretends. But the man who burns, the man who walks through the fire, he sees, he knows, he becomes, and once he does, there is no going back, because once you have seen yourself in the fire, you can never again live in the dark. 4. The man who walks alone. A man who has seen himself walks alone, not because he chooses to, not because he rejects others, but because no one can walk with him, because no one else has walked through the same fire, no one else has seen the same truth, no one else has faced the same mirror, and so he walks, alone, not in pride, not in arrogance, not in isolation, but in silence, because silence is the language of the man who has seen, because silence is the voice of the man who has burned, because silence is the echo of the man who has died and risen, and in that silence, he finds something, not peace, not comfort, not even certainty, but purpose. Because once you have faced the truth, once you have walked through the fire, once you have broken the mirror, you no longer need others to tell you who you are. You know, you are not defined by your past, you are not shaped by your mother, you are not trapped by your prophecy, you are not cursed by your fate, you are not bound by your fear, you are not limited by your illusion, you are not broken by your truth. You are the man who sees, and the man who sees walks. He walks with purpose, he walks with direction, he walks with conviction, because he no longer needs to prove himself, he no longer needs to be validated, he no longer needs to be understood, because he has already seen himself, and that is enough, because that is everything, because once you have seen yourself, you no longer need the world to show you, because once you have walked through the fire, you no longer fear the dark, because once you have broken the mirror, you no longer need reflection, because once you have died to the false self, you are finally free, and that is the final truth, that the man who walks alone is not lonely, he is whole, and that is the man who has seen, and that is the man who has burned, and that is the man who has become, and that is the man who is free. A man is not defined by what he possesses, not by wealth, not by power, not even by love. No, a man is defined by what he carries when all else is stripped away. And if you have walked this far with Oedipus, through fire, through loss, through the silence of solitude, then you already know what that weight is. It is not duty, it is not destiny, it is not even purpose, it is identity, the kind that cannot be given, the kind that must be earned, because only when everything else is gone, when love has been left behind, when comfort has burned, when the world no longer recognizes who you were, do you finally see who you have become, and that is the final truth. The one that reframes it all. You thought Oedipus was cursed by prophecy. You thought he was doomed by fate. You thought his tragedy was in what he did, not in what he saw. But that is not the heart of his story. That is only the surface. Beneath it, in the marrow of his myth, lies something deeper, something more dangerous. Oedipus did not fall because he killed his father. He did not break because he married his mother. He did not lose himself because of fate. He lost himself because he refused to see, because he believed he could escape what was already inside him, because he thought he could run from the self. But the self is not a place, it is a presence, and presence cannot be outrun, it can only be faced. And when Oedipus finally saw himself, not as a king, not as a savior, not as a man of destiny, but as a man shaped by forces beyond his control, he became something else, not a victim, not a cursed soul, but a seer, a man who had been burned, a man who had been stripped bare, a man who had been forced to look into the fire and not look away. And in that fire, he was not destroyed, he was forged, because the man who sees himself becomes the fire, because the man who faces the truth becomes the truth, because the man who walks through the flames becomes the flame. And once you have become the fire, you no longer fear it, you no longer run from it, you no longer flinch when it comes, because you are it. And that is the final revelation, that the fire was never outside you, it was always inside, and the only way to survive it is to become it. Here is the death of the self. Most men fear death. They fear the end. They fear the unknown. But there is another death, quieter, slower. that few dare to speak of, the death of the self, not in madness, not in destruction, but in transformation. Oedipus did not die in exile, he died in becoming. He let go of who he was, the prince, the savior, the man who believed he could escape fate, and stepped into who he was meant to be, a man who had seen, a man who had burned, a man who had become. And that is the ultimate sacrifice, because once you make that choice, once you surrender to the fire, there is no return. You are no longer who you were, and you will never again be understood by those who still live in the world you left behind. That is the price, not of greatness, but of truth, because the man who walks the unseen path does not do it for recognition. He does it because he must, because he has seen the fire. And once you have seen it burn, truly burn, you can never turn away, because the fire does not release you, it only transforms you. And once you are transformed, you are no longer the same. You are no longer bound by illusion. You are no longer trapped by fear. You are no longer chained by the past, because you have died, and in dying, you have become. And that is the final truth, that the only way to be reborn is to die first, not in body, but in self, because the self you were cannot carry the fire, only the self you become can. There is a mirror that must be broken. We look to others to tell us who we are. We seek validation in love, in approval, in belonging. But the moment you answer the call of truth, that mirror shatters, because you are no longer who others want you to be. You are who the fire demands. And that is why so many resist, why they cling to comfort, why they run from the weight. Because to accept it means breaking the mirror, means walking away from the reflection that once made you feel whole. Oedipus did not reject Jocasta out of cruelty. He rejected her because he could no longer live inside the reflection she offered. He had become something else, something greater. And sometimes, love cannot hold that. Sometimes, love must be left behind, not as a failure, but as a necessity. Because the man who would become must break the mirror that defines him, or he will never see the fire within. Because the mirror does not lie. It only shows you what you are. But if you are not willing to see, then the mirror becomes a prison. And the only way out is to break it. Because once the mirror is gone, you are free. Free from the need to be known. Free from the need to be loved in a way that binds you. Free from the need to live in the reflection of others. Because once the mirror is gone, you are no longer a reflection. You are the fire. And fire does not need a mirror. Fire only needs fuel, and the fuel is you, the old self, the false self, the self that was shaped by others. And once that burns away, what remains is not a man, it is the fire, and the fire is you. Here is the truth that cannot be spoken softly. You wanted answers, you wanted clarity, you wanted a lesson wrapped in comfort. But here is the truth that burns. Purpose is not a gift, it is a demand. It does not ask if you are ready, it only asks if you will answer. And if you do, if you truly do, then you must be willing to lose everything, to walk alone, to carry the weight, to become the fire. Because only then, only after everything else has burned away, will you understand what it means to be a man. Not a man of titles, not a man of ease, but a man of fire, a man of mission, a man who sees the world not as it is, but as it must be, and who steps forward, alone, unafraid, unstoppable, to build it. Because the world does not need more men who follow, it needs men who lead, not with force, not with ego, but with fire, with clarity, with truth, with the willingness to burn. Because the world is full of men who hide, full of men who run, full of men who pretend, but the man who sees must walk forward, must speak, must burn, must reveal, because the fire is still burning, and it is calling for every man who is ready to hear it, for every soul who is willing to carry it, for every voice that refuses to remain silent in the face of decay. This is not the end, it is the beginning of your becoming. If this shattered your illusions, then like, comment, subscribe, and join the resistance to the modern drift, because the fire is still burning and it is calling for every man who is ready to hear it, for every soul who is willing to carry it, for every voice that refuses to remain silent in the face of decay. This is not the end, it is the beginning of your becoming.